Are there any constituency statements by honourable members? The member for Moore.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Joondalup Health Campus in my electorate is the largest healthcare facility in the northern suburbs of Perth, a region which is growing at the rate of 10,000 new residents each and every year for the next 20 years. It comprises a public hospital operated in public-private partnership with the WA state government until 2043, and a private hospital. A construction program of nearly $500 million is currently in progress to deliver additional beds, operating theatres, and expand services across the public and private facilities. This includes $269.4 million in government funding for the public component and $190 million of private sector investment by Ramsay Health Care for the private hospital. With the necessary federal funding, Joondalup has the potential to emerge as the strategic, accessible centre for health and medical services that meets the northern suburbs' specialist and higher acuity medical needs, as well as general and emergency care and allied health services, eliminating the need for residents to commute long distances into Perth CBD for essential medical treatment. Ramsay Health Care seeks to build on the services it currently provides, with a significant focus on cardiology procedures, orthopaedics, general surgery, endoscopy, and ophthalmology, while expanding ear, nose and throat, urology, and vascular surgery. Ramsay also seeks to expand cancer care and associated surgeries at Joondalup Health Campus, including breast and colorectal surgery. I call upon the Federal Government and Health Minister to commit to critical investment and support the development of a specialist and medical hub within Joondalup City Centre, with targeted speciality inpatient and outpatient clinical funding and increased high acuity specialist services based at Joondalup Health Campus. The development of a Joondalup Health and Medical Hub will improve the well-being of our growing community, bringing together preventative healthcare, primary healthcare, allied healthcare, and hospital-level care, and integrating those with teaching and research institutions at a location which is accessible to a population of more than 500,000 residents who live within a 20-minute drive of the Joondalup City Centre. Thank you.
Thank you. The member for Fraser.
Deputy Speaker, I rise today to pay tribute to Sarah Carter. Sarah Carter lived a full life, taking advantage of every opportunity to fight for causes that she believed in, both at the most local level and on the biggest international stages. She was a larger-than-life figure who touched the lives of so many with her energy, her enthusiasm, and her intelligence, all whose lives she touched are so much the richer. Sarah was a true servant of the community. I met her in her role as councillor for the Maribyrnong City Council and could immediately sense that she was not your run-of-the-mill public figure. She served with great distinction over such a long period of time. 16 years as a councillor, an almost incomprehensibly long period of dedication given how much is asked of councillors. 16 years of council meetings dealing with controversial motions, 16 years of tough planning decisions, and 16 years of throwing herself into every tricky and important local cause, community group and event. She was always there, and always with a beaming smile. Sarah was 3 times a mayor, the first time that feat had ever been accomplished by a woman, and it led to her being named Maribyrnong's first female emeritus mayor. But more than these statistics and accolades, Sarah's tenure was about her contribution as a relentlessly dedicated champion of the most important local causes. It was about how she evolved to become, in so many ways, the glue that held everything together. Whatever the issue, she would be the one who was able to recount its history, the nuances and all the possible options for resolving it. Whenever I was stumped on a complex issue, she was the first person that I'd think to call. And of course, Sarah played such a critical role at Save the Children. There couldn't have been a better person to be in charge of persuading busy MPs to travel to far-flung locations around the world. And that was demonstrated by how many MPs she in fact managed to take with her, often into regions that took MPs well outside their comfort zones. And even though I'm sad to say that I was never able to attend one of these trips, without exception, all of those who have told me about them recount that there couldn't have been a more dedicated and fun travelling companion. Sarah had responsibility for the Australian Leadership Initiative for Save the Children, which saw her lead delegations to the Pacific, the Middle East and Southeast Asia. On one of the rare occasions when she wasn't present at a local event, you could imagine her introducing a gaggle of MPs in one of these above regions to local communities, working hard to raise the profile of those most in need of assistance. I'm so sad that I won't be able to work with Sarah, to enjoy her infectious enthusiasm and to see her ongoing positive impact. My condolences to Sarah's family and her large and dedicated network of friends. Vale Sarah Carter.
Thank you. The member for Canning.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Only 30 minutes north of Canning lies what will be Australia's biggest national endeavour this century. It will be the home of AUKUS, HMAS Stirling, otherwise known as Submarine Rotational Force West or SURF West. This is our first AUKUS milestone where we will host US and UK nuclear-powered submarines alongside HMAS Stirling from 2027. And as I've said many times before, SURF West is simply too important to fail. A few weeks ago, I visited HMAS Stirling, and while there's still a long road ahead before 2027, I feel confident that our defence officials recognise the importance of this first step and they are getting on with the job of getting us ready. The Australian Submarine Agency is uplifting the base. They are upgrading facilities, building new housing for personnel. They're securing the power supply and doing everything else that needs to be done to move Stirling from a conventional base to a nuclear base. Our people understand the significance of AUKUS within defence. The WA state government, concerningly, does not. Rockingham is in the middle of a housing and infrastructure crisis. We have a crisis of supply and housing, and we have an infrastructure deficit with our roads. This is leaving people without houses, and we are seeing massive congestion on our roads around the Rockingham precinct. And in May, locals expressed their concerns about traffic on Parkin Street. Excuse me. In March, a US official expressed concerns about WA's readiness, and the Defence Minister himself has signalled concerns. He said this month that there's a whole range of issues that have to be worked through and that the WA government would need to do more. Despite calls for action, WA Labor is absent when it comes to AUKUS, and yet despite that, they are critical to its success. They are failing to acknowledge or resolve the challenges that we face, and that's why last week I called on Premier Roger Cook to appoint a full-time minister for AUKUS. There must be someone sitting at the state cabinet table driving the machinery of government to focus on the infrastructure projects that need to be delivered, fixing congestion, building homes and coordinating all the stakeholders across the state that are needed to deliver AUKUS in a timely manner. In fact, Premier Cook should be following the example of South Australian Premier Malinauskas to drive AUKUS and build social licence with Western Australians. I think Malinauskas is a good case study for Premier Cook. Instead, WA Labor is falling behind and failing to grasp this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And I've long voiced my concerns about WA Labor's preparedness for SURF West. I've met with local councils and stakeholders, and they all tell me the same thing. There is no leadership from the WA state government. So once again, I call upon Premier Roger Cook to appoint a full-time AUKUS minister within his state cabinet, fully empowered to drive all the machinery of government required to deliver AUKUS on a timely manner.
Thank you. The member for Boothby.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The famous City to Glenelg tram cuts through my electorate of Boothby, and within Boothby there are 3 major tram crossings on major roads. Each of these trams crossings is also near major road intersections on busy commuter routes in and out of the city, and these intersections are a nightmare. The boom gates can be down up to 20 minutes an hour. The traffic stops and starts and stops and starts and stops and starts between traffic lights, boom gates and then more traffic lights, all within 100 or so metres of each other. In rush hour, traffic can be banked up over 2 or 3 kilometres and drivers queue across intersections and undertake really risky manoeuvres to try and get around the traffic queues. When I'm door knocking in these areas, I find whole suburbs doing rat runs through the back streets to try and avoid these terrible intersections, pushing traffic onto small residential streets. But the commuter traffic from further south has no choice. The previous Liberal National Government promised to remove them at 2016, 2018 and 2019 state and federal elections, but did nothing. So, at the last state and federal elections, Labor committed to removing the Marion and Crossroad tram intersections, and after lobbying by myself and state members Jane Stinson and Sarah Andrews, with support from a community petition, Minister Tom Koutsantonis included the Morford Road tram intersection as a possibility in the tender in March 2023. So I was very pleased to have Minister Catherine King in town a couple of weeks ago for the announcement that the third tram intersection would indeed be included in the project. These plans also incorporate safer pathways for cyclists and pedestrians who are currently also having to cross these major roads. The new designs incorporate additional open space for local community with potential for tree plantings, recreational facilities, all of which is currently being consulted on with the local residents. Speaker, I'm pleased to advise that the minor prep works have already begun and the major works will commence later this year and into next year. There will be a 6-month tram shutdown in the middle of 2025 and additional bus services will be provided to assist commuters who normally use the tram during this period. The removal of all 3 tram intersections, as well as the upgrade of the existing South Road tram overpass, will be completed by the end of 2025. And because most of the works, the building of the ramps for the overpass, will occur on either side of the roads, the impact on commuter traffic through these intersections will be minimised. Deputy Speaker, I've talked in this place about the importance of the north-south corridor to traffic in Boothby. However, when the works begin on this project, we know a lot of the traffic currently using South Road to commute will want to use these other roads as their journey. The removal of the 3 tram intersections will enable traffic from Boothby and Kingston, all of southern Adelaide, to flow more freely. It's a really great outcome for Boothby.
Thank you. The member for Petrie.
Well, thank you, Deputy Speaker. I rise to speak on local infrastructure within the Petrie electorate. And over the past months, my commitment, along with the people of Petrie, to enhancing the quality of life for our community has translated into tangible improvements, particularly through the local councils. From the upgrades to our roads, we're witnessing a transformation that not only supports our growing population, but also reflects my commitment and the people that I represent's dedication to a vibrant and connected future. Now, roads are generally constructed by the councils or by the state government, and there's a stark contrast with what's happening there at the moment. The councils, both the Brisbane City Council and the City of Moreton Bay, are getting on with building the job, whereas the state government is doing a very poor job, and I'll touch on that quickly. In my own electorate, the areas that were just recently upgraded include Klinger Road, so with the support of the City of Moreton Bay, Klinger Road, the intersection at Klinger Road and Boardman Road at Kippa-Ring was recently upgraded. There was a few problems with the workers hitting a gas line, but it's now completely done. And through the federal local roads and community infrastructure program, we were able to secure this much-funded upgrade, some $4.8 million from the previous federal coalition government. And this project was delayed significantly, but it was eventually done. And so I want to thank the City of Moreton Bay for improving that roundabout into a signalised intersection. Kinsella's Road West at Mango Hill, funding was available there through the local roads and community infrastructure program through the previous coalition government, and we secured $250,000 to upgrade that. Construction's also underway. Flinders Parade at North Lakes, we secured $1.3 million there, and with the work of the City of Moreton Bay, we were able to upgrade Flinders Parade and Cook Court at North Lakes, which is a really busy intersection due to Costco and Bunnings being just down the road. And in the Brisbane City Council, Beams Road and Dorval Road is now underway, where some years ago we were able to secure $50 million in federal funding to give to council to get this done, and it's a widening of roads. Now, the big issue, but is the Labor state government in Queensland. They're absolutely pathetic and they're doing a really poor job, and I'll tell you why. For years, we've been waiting on the Beams Road overpass to be done, the Linkfield Road overpass to be done, the Gateway motorway to be upgraded between St John Fisher and the Pine River. All of that hasn't started until very recently, just 10 weeks out before a state election. They finally get the Beams Road overpass going. We had the Minister Bart Mellish and Sterling Hinchcliffe putting up billboards prior to 2020 saying construction will start in 2021. It's now 2024, 3 years late, and they've just started it. Not only that, we also had the Premier that said nothing on the Dolly's Rocks on and off ramps at Marumba Down and Griffin, nothing before 2020. 10 weeks out before a state election, finally he's on board, and we just started that as well. And the funding there, 80% of that came from the former federal coalition government as well. But thank you.
Thank you. The member for Wills.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I want to share a story of one of my constituents, Rami, who reached out to my office for assistance. Rami sought help to bring his 80-year-old father, Cameron, out of Gaza through the Rafah crossing. And I'm pleased that Cameron is now safe in Melbourne, reunited with his son, and for the very first time, he's cherishing precious moments with his grandchildren who he'd never met. During our meeting, Cameron was in good health and high spirits, and it was a profound moment to witness the joy of their reunion. And I want to express my gratitude to the Foreign Minister, Penny Wong, and her office for their invaluable support and assistance throughout that process. Cameron's journey highlights the importance of our commitment to aiding those in need, regardless of borders or circumstances. It underscores the need for compassionate policies that prioritise human dignity and safety. Also, Deputy Speaker, I recently held a roundtable with Minister Claire O'Neill to hear directly from young people about their experiences with housing and renting. These are people that live in my electorate, and their experiences range from living in poor and dangerous rental properties to dealing with unethical agent practices and facing arduous and invasive application requirements. This roundtable actually reinforced the urgent need for housing reforms, and the Albanese Labor government is taking action on this. After a decade of neglect from the former coalition government, this government, the Labor government, has committed $32 billion in just 2 years to build new homes. That's real action, it's tangible, it's making a difference, and it will make a difference. So our priority is simple. It is to build more homes for more Australians. That's simple. And the government has an ambitious national target of building 1.2 million homes by the end of the decade. The Housing Australia Future Fund will deliver 30,000 new social and affordable homes over the next 5 years. The Help to Buy scheme and the Regional First Home Buyer Guarantee are also crucial in making home ownership more accessible, and I urge those opposite to support those bills and those policies. To support those facing rental stress, we've increased Commonwealth rental assistance by 25%, putting $4.6 billion back in the renters' pockets, and introduced build-to-rent incentives to support a more stable and secure rental market. Now, Deputy Speaker, the Albanese government is making significant investment into housing, that's clear, but we recognise there's more to do. We need to do more. It is a crisis, and that's why we're prioritising housing and housing reform and affordable housing, and we hope that those opposite, maybe not some of the minor parties who are playing politics with this, but maybe those opposite might see fit to actually support those policies in the national interest and for their own constituents. Our new Housing Minister, Claire O'Neill, is already on the job, working on various new reforms to help every Australian have access to safe, secure and affordable housing. And I would ask those opposite to support those reforms in good faith, because it will make a difference to Australians looking for housing, wanting affordable housing and wanting the dignity of having a roof over their head.
Thank you. The member for Herbert.
City deals are meant to be a partnership between the federal, state and local governments to position Australians' population centres for the future. Yet the Queensland State Labor government, along with its federal counterpart, have made it its full-time mission to screw the people of Townsville over at every opportunity. The former coalition government entered the Townsville City deal in good faith. In 2019, we committed $200 million to the Horton Pipeline, Stage 2. That money was eventually rejected by the Labor-led state and local government some 12 months later due to a lie over GST. Today, this is one of the biggest disasters of public work in the history of North Queensland, with a cost increase of 133% to $420 million, as well as a completion blowout that has not seen a single drop of water flow. Then we have Reef HQ, a project fully funded and ready to go until the Labor government came to power, re-scoped the project to a knockdown and rebuild without any community consultation, and then failed to fund a replacement facility. The people of Townsville have now been waiting for over 2 years with zero clarity on the future of Reef HQ. That is an entire generation of young people who have been failed by this miserable Albanese government. And because that is not enough screwing by these inept career politicians who call themselves leaders, the people of Townsville have also now waited 3 years for a business case to be delivered on the Townsville Concert Hall project, a project again funded by the former coalition government. And we know from a slip-up by Labor's Townsville MP Scott Stewart that this project is all but dead in the water if his federal and southeast Queensland puppet masters get their way. All three of these projects funded, announced and ready to be delivered to the people of Townsville. Instead, the state and federal Labor governments have put their own cheap political thrills above practical, sensible outcomes. And incredibly, the deception worsens the longer this mess goes on. Since the community outcry following Reef HQ debacle, the Albanese Labor government has been laying the foundations for a cynical ploy to fill the funding gap. The government is now asking the Townsville Council whether it's still interested in the $100 million for the concert hall. Because guess how much funding is needed by Labor to fund a rebuild of Reef HQ? $100 million. It's not one or the other, it's both projects that the people of Townsville deserve. The politicking is disgusting behaviour from people who are elected to do better. I call on them to be better. The future of Townsville depends on it.
Call the member for McEwen.
Last week I had the honour of visiting 3 local businesses in our electorate of McEwen. I visited these businesses because they were recipients of the Australian Government's energy and efficiency grants for small and medium enterprises, which provides direct support for small and medium businesses to improve their energy efficiency, ease pressure on power bills and reduce emissions. First, there was the Black Forest Motel in Macedon, and I visited John Turner there and his team at Black Forest Motel in Macedon to see and hear how they will utilise these funds from their successful grant application. They plan to replace 14 inefficient room fridges and 2 communal fridges that have low energy ratings with newer models and higher efficiency. They will also install power card readers in every room, which turns off the power when the card is removed. John believes these changes will see the business save approximately $5,000 to $7,000 a year on its power bills, as well as reducing emissions. The Black Forest Motel has long been a central hub for the community during times of crisis with fires, floods and storms. And it's great to be able to support a business that does so much for our community. We then went down to the Jolly Miller Cafe in Gisborne. It's a favourite stop of ours, a place where I remember taking former Prime Minister Bob Hawke, and he was very impressed with their cheese and onion sandwiches. He said there was good helpings in that. So it was great to see that they received energy efficiency grant as well. Cost of living pressures have a flow-on effect to local businesses in our community and their ability to adapt and save overheads. Thanks to head chef Priyanka and store manager Francis, who explained what the upgrades will do to well-used appliances that help the business become energy efficient and save on costs. It means that they will be able to continue the great work that they've been doing for a long time there. We also went down to Dreaming Goat Dairy in Monteghita. Daniel and Sarah Ajna of Dreaming Goat Dairy in Monteghita have an amazing story. They run a 50-acre goat farm and a small-scale dairy in Monteghita where they produce some of the best curd that's ever been tasted. Daniel explained on my recent visit to congratulate them on the successful application of the energy efficiency grant, these funds will make a huge difference to their food business. These funds will allow them to update their current energy-hungry second-hand refrigeration units and purchase a new refrigerated trailer, which is important when you're transporting, obviously, dairy goods. It was a pleasure to tour the farm, see the many goats who are preparing for the next generation of goats to come, and to see how their tree change dream will continue to flourish with the assistance of the Albanese government. And I'd encourage more businesses to look at these grants as an opportunity to help save on one of the most expensive things in business, which is energy, and a way to upgrade your facilities to build a better future.
Call the member for Longman.
Recently, I attended the fundraising dinner for the school chaplain Nancy Jones at my old school, Dackerman State High. North Pine Baptist Church at Kalanga hosted the evening, and there were many past students and teachers present, as well as the current principal, Pete Keane, and one of the deputy principals, Ray Ellis. Thank you to those who contributed to the night with their stories and opening up about the struggles you faced at high school and the positive impact that the school chaplain had in helping you through that difficult period. Deputy Speaker, Longman is truly blessed to have wonderful chaplains throughout the majority of its 44 schools. These committed individuals provide a safe pair of ears for teenagers to confide in on matters or issues they may have difficulty in talking to their teachers or parents about. Many also provide practical assistance running initiatives such as Brekkie Club, which feeds kids that for various reasons may come to school hungry, not to mention the staff and parents they care for as well. These selfless individuals are probably the lowest paid workers in the country and receive a small amount of government funding which funds around 1.5 days per week. Many chaplains are at their schools for much more than this and either rely on donations from generous private donors, which has unfortunately shrunk by 30% since the tax deductibility on donations was removed 2 years ago when the new government was elected. Others choose to donate their time, and many have quit much higher paying jobs to take up this calling. As I said on the night, although they cannot speak about their faith, their actions will show the love of Christ far more than any words ever will. On behalf of myself and the lives you have touched, thank you. Deputy Speaker, so many of our children and teenagers don't fit our current education system. Some have medical conditions, some are disengaged because of current or past abusive situations in their lives, and some are just not wired to learn through our current academic systems and mainstream schools. In Longman, we have 2 schools in Caboolture that help deal with these disengaged students, Alta One and Horizons College. Both these schools target a different type of disengaged student, and both do an amazing job. Their problem is one of capacity to handle the demand. Deputy Speaker, these schools provide not only education to students, many of whom would otherwise be on a downward spiral, their higher teacher-to-student ratios mean that these often neglected children are given attention. It is a great concern to me that these schools are having to refuse entry to our younger generation because they simply don't have the room. When I visit these schools and talk to the students, they tell me how much they are now enjoying school compared to when they were in a mainstream school that didn't suit them, which is music to my ears. For those students who are academic and suit the mainstream system, I say, good luck to you. I hope you're going to great things, but surely we must ensure that all our kids are given every opportunity to flourish and become the best version of themselves. Keep up the great work, Alta One College and Horizons College.
I call the member for Blair.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. On Saturday, the 3rd of August, I was pleased, along with a large crowd, to attend the Ipswich Jets Leagues Club for the grand final breakfast for the Ipswich Jets netball team, which was playing the Gold Coast Titans at 6 p.m. the next night in the grand final Queensland Sapphire Series, which is the main Queensland state competition below the national Super Netball competition. Now, the Jets have been in the competition for 6 years and they made the grand final in 3 of those 6 years. The Jets had played the Gold Coast Titans twice during the regular season and beaten them twice, including the First Nations round to secure the minor premiership. And we had a lot of optimism there. I'm pleased to say that the next night I was there along with, seemed like half of Ipswich, to cheer on the Jets netball team, and they defeated the Gold Coast Titans 59-50. I want to congratulate the whole organisation, CEO Richard Hughes, Chair Steve Jono Johnson, particularly head coach Paula Stewart and captain courageous Steph O'Brien. Steph's outstanding mid-court work and her passing is legendary. She's a HPE teacher at Bremer State High School, so they'll be rejoicing there. When I spoke to Paula and Steph after the game, they both told me this had been 25 years in the making for Steph. I want to congratulate also Ipswich Jets player Elsa Siv Sandholt, who'd just been selected in the Australian under-21 squad and is one of only 2 Queenslanders to make the team. And Elsa's great shooting. She scored 37 goals in the grand final and was the most valuable player. I want to congratulate also TAE Aerospace and particularly the facility director Terry Portman, for the wonderful gesture he made at the grand final breakfast. Some beautifully crafted challenge coins were given to each of the player, signifying the comradeship and special collective achievement of the whole team. The Netball Queensland CEO, Kate Davies, said of the Jets that the professionalism the Jets bring to the competition is outstanding. And speaking at the grand final breakfast, she said the Jets had raised the bar and she was not surprised to see them in the grand final again. After losing the grand final by just 1 point last year, it was so pleasing to see the Jets win. The joy, the elation that it brought to my whole city of Ipswich was just tremendous. And the Jets organisation, with their commitment to rugby league and netball, should be applauded. Fantastic organisation. I want to thank them all. The comradeship between the rugby league players and the netball players is there for all to see, and I look forward to the celebratory dinner we'll have to celebrate the achievements of both the netball and rugby league players very shortly.
In accordance with Standing Order 193, the time for members' constituency statements has concluded, and I call the clerk.
Government business, order of the day number 1, 2024-25 budget papers.
The question is that the documents be noted, and I call the member for Wannon.
Thanks, Deputy Speaker. And it's a pleasure to rise today on the budget because it gives me the opportunity to point out how the budget is failing Australians, and in particular how the budget is failing regional and rural Australia, and in particular how the budget is failing my great electorate of Wannon. When the first thing that you note in a budget is that there's been cuts to infrastructure, then you know it's not a budget for rural Australia. And sadly, you know it's not a budget for my electorate of Wannon, because one of the key things that I've always focused on in over 14 years as the member for Wannon is year after year after year delivering more money for our roads. We know the Victorian State Government won't do its job when it comes to funding our roads, so I've pushed relentlessly to make sure that the Commonwealth Government does the job to the best of its ability in giving the state government money to fix its roads. And we've been able to make progress with the Princess Highway. We've been able to make progress with the Western Highway. We've been able to make progress working through local government to fix roads. But there is still such a gigantic workload to be done because the state government, for every dollar the Commonwealth puts in, sadly peels money away. And we've seen that in their recent maintenance budget. They are cutting their maintenance budget at a time where the roads in my electorate need more maintaining, not less. So what I'd called on before the budget was for the Albanese Labor government to do its job, to make sure it stepped in and said to the Victorian State Government, we need you to deliver 4 roads in regional and rural Victoria, in Western Victoria, and here is money to do it. So at least the maintenance budget would be being maintained. But what we've seen from this Labor government here in Canberra is exactly the same now as the Labor government in Melbourne. They are quite prepared to fund big infrastructure projects in the capital city, but they will not fund road projects right across our rural areas and right across our regions. And this is having a devastating impact. Now, one of the things that we always did when we were in government was put additional funding into roads. For instance, we put $60 million into fixing the Princess Highway between Warrnambool and Port Fairy. Now, the sad reality is the state government hasn't been able to show that it got value for money from that $60 million. As a matter of fact, it's very hard to see what they did with it. Then there was $80 million for the rest of the Princess Highway. And once again, it's very hard to see where we got true value for money from that spending. There was over $200 million for fixing the Warrnambool to Melbourne rail line. Once again, we were promised velocity trains as a result of that investment, yet the state government seemed to have squandered that money as well. But we were able to deliver the funding. And the real test of both the Albanese Labor government and the Allen government in Victoria, A, is to restore the funding that we were delivering, and then B, when it comes to the Victorian state government, make sure you're getting value for money out of what is being invested in our roads. And I will continue to advocate day in, day out for that funding. We know the Commonwealth Government can't build the roads, it can't maintain the roads. It has to do that through the Victorian State Government because they're their roads that need the fixing. But we can provide the funding and then shame them into doing something. And that is what I will continue to do. This budget also failed the people of Wannon because it hasn't addressed cost of living pressures. It's done nothing when it comes to addressing cost of living pressures. I've done listening posts over the last 5 weeks in my electorate, and for the first time ever, people have been coming to me with their power bills. And it's not just one or two, they're coming to me 5, 6, 7 at a time to show me their power bills. And it's individuals who are coming and showing me their power bills. And sadly as well, it's small businesses. Small businesses in many of the rural towns in my electorate, because of the increase they've seen in their power bills, are now working the first 2, 3, 4 days of any week for nothing, because the power bills are eating into the returns that they make so badly that one constituent came to see me to say him and his wife, they now can't employ any staff, are basically working just to keep the door of their small business open. And that is something I have never seen before. They are lining up with their energy bills. And if this government could do anything, it would be to immediately address cost of living pressures. But the sad reality is it seems like the government is clueless when it comes to how to address cost of living pressures. It has no plan to deal with inflation. And more we're seeing people know quite clearly now that the only way the cost of living will be addressed, the only way that inflation can be brought under control is through the economic management of a coalition government. There was also, sadly, nothing in the budget when it came to community infrastructure in my electorate of Wannon. Now, on Saturday, I had the great pleasure of going to Panmure and opening family-friendly, female-friendly new change rooms for the netballers, the women cricketers and for others. Now, that building came about because of $500,000 from the coalition government under our community infrastructure and roads program that went to local government. We saw firsthand what that program has delivered. And there are numerous other examples across my electorate of where that program has delivered. Yet what have we seen from the government? We've seen an announcement of a community infrastructure fund, yet not one project has been nominated to be a recipient of that fund. We are now over 2 years into this government and not one project has been nominated under their community infrastructure fund for funding. And yet what we have in my electorate is examples such as Port Fairy, the football netball club there, at Skipton, the football netball club there, of facilities, especially when it comes to female participation, waiting for the government to make some sort of announcement, to announce that they're going to fund some sort of community infrastructure. Just north of Hamilton, there is another example where the community is waiting to see whether this fund will be used. And my hope is that the people of Cavendish, who have put so much time and effort into making sure that they've put a proposal in, that they will be recognised and funded under this program, because the work required to go through the various stages for a small community club is enormous, and my hope is that this will be recognised by the government. So, Deputy Speaker, there are many ways that this budget continues to fail the people of my electorate, but there's those three crucial ones. And let's hope that in the MyEFO or in the next budget, these three areas are recognised by this government. We need more funding for our roads. We need cost of living addressed, and we need money for community infrastructure projects.
There being no further speakers, the debate is adjourned, and I call the member for Dunkley.
I move that the Federation Chamber do now adjourn.
I call the member.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The Labor government knows that Australians are having a tough time finding housing to buy and rent, and is getting on with the job of building homes for Australia. The new financial year marks the next phase of our $32 billion Homes for Australia plan. This is huge. Homes for Australia will build more homes more quickly in more parts of the country, fulfilling an ambitious goal of building 1.2 million homes by the end of the decade. And whilst the Liberals and Greens team up to block more housing, the Labor government is trying to boost supply. 59.5% of household families in Dunkley are low-income families. I hear from my constituents each week that this is a big issue. As a new MP, there are people you meet that you remember and cannot forget. Tony from Frankston, who spoke to me about the reality that he and his wife are both working. They are renting in the local area, having moved from Mornington Peninsula due to rental increases. He mentioned that despite both him and his wife working, he is likely to have to move again out of the area in the next 12 months. He is nervous about homelessness due to the increasing cost of rents and the lack of housing supply. I am also aware of locals forsaking food and selling household items because there is not enough funds to rent and afford their rent. There are a number of incentives that the states and territories are undertaking to support the reforms to boost supply of housing. The government has committed $3 billion under the new homes bonus for states and territories to help meet this target. There are so many other important housing reforms on the go. The new $9.3 billion 5-year national agreement on social housing and homelessness to combat homelessness, provide crisis support and build and repair social housing. This new agreement includes a doubling of Commonwealth funding for homelessness and is to be matched by states and territories. Money from the $10 billion Housing Australia Future Fund will start to spend. In its first 5 years, the fund will support 30,000 social and affordable rental homes. $2 billion social housing accelerator dollars will be used to deliver 4,000 new social homes across Australia. $5.5 billion is being invested in the Help to Buy scheme to help more Australians buy new homes. The Help to Buy scheme will support 40,000 Australian households to purchase a new or existing home with an equity contribution from the government. And then there is $2.7 billion to increase Commonwealth rent assistance. And to support this, we're putting $90.6 million to boost the number of construction workers including 20,000 new fee-free places, and supporting apprentices through a $5,000 apprenticeship allowance so that they can complete their apprenticeships. We are also supporting employers of apprentices with a $5,000 incentive. To work to addressing housing supply, this government has invested significant funding into the construction of new homes. The policies and funding are focused on increasing supply. The package is ensuring more Australians have a roof over their head and aren't sleeping rough, particularly women impacted by domestic and family violence and young people. More Australians will have access to affordable housing. These initiatives by the Labor government are the most significant investment in housing. This package of $32 billion is more than the opposition delivered in nearly 9 years of government. It is substantial and outstanding in investment in housing, which is much needed in this country.
Is there a seconder for the motion?
I second the motion.
Member for McKellar.
I recently visited the Bulga State Forest, located 80 kilometres to the west of Port Macquarie in New South Wales. The Bulga State Forest is a native forest that is imminently due to be logged. Whilst there with locals, I had the profound pleasure of seeing an endangered greater glider emerge from its den tree just after dusk. In fact, I personally saw a few greater gliders that night in the space of a couple of hours. Seeing these beautiful creatures, our largest glider and definitely the cutest, was a truly special experience. But this magic moment is increasingly rare. Greater glider numbers have declined 80% in the last 20 years. In 2022, they were added to the endangered species list. The reason? Native forest logging is killing off their critical habitat and fiercer bushfires fuelled by climate change. Last week, New South Wales Forestry Corporation, owned by the New South Wales Government, closed Bulga State Forest to the public in preparation for logging of this amazing forest where I saw these endangered species. There are likely to be fierce protests from the local community when the heavy machinery arrives and begins its destruction. Forestry Corp New South Wales will tell you that it takes steps to protect the greater gliders of the Bulga Forest. It will talk about selective logging. But Forestry Corp New South Wales is not required to undertake systematic surveys of den trees to see where viable populations of greater gliders are hanging on. I'm told they will look for their den trees, but only from the road, and conduct just 2 passes looking for the gliders. And until recently, Forestry Corps New South Wales was undertaking surveys for nocturnal species, for nocturnal animals during the daytime. Funnily enough, they didn't see any. This is a travesty, and I can't understand why it is happening. Our Federal Environment Minister has claimed that protections for greater gliders have increased because their status was upgraded from vulnerable to endangered in 2022. But this is not helping protect greater gliders on the ground in real life. New South Wales Forestry Corps' operations take place under a regional forestry agreement. These regional forestry agreements are exempt from assessment under our national environment laws. To be clear, the Federal Environment Minister does not have a role to play in assessing whether logging by a state-owned forestry company is taking place in a way that is harming endangered animals. But this is because the federal government to date has refused to remove the exemption of regional forestry agreements from scrutiny under our national environment laws, from under the Environment Protection Biodiversity Conservation Act. Instead, it has left it to state agencies to police this rogue corporation, Forestry Corp New South Wales, and I use that term advisedly. In the last 5 years, New South Wales Forestry Corp has been charged with over a dozen unlawful actions, including 7 criminal actions, criminal convictions. Last month, in the New South Wales Land and Environment Court, it was fined $360,000 for removing 53 trees in a forest near Eden. These were refuges for native species after the 2020 bushfires. Justice Rachel Pepper accepted that Forestry Court has, and I quote, a pattern of environmental offending, has not provided any compelling evidence of measures to prevent its reoffending, and does not accept the true extent of harm that it has caused by its offending. Do not believe the spin from Forestry Court. Look at its record. The Federal Environment Minister should do the same. If we don't want more extinctions, we need to end native forest logging now and end the Regional Forestry Agreement exemptions. It is inconceivable to me that the Bulga State Forest is about to be logged where there are obviously greater gliders living throughout it, an endangered species. We are destroying native forests and habitat for critically endangered species for what? For wood chips and tomato steaks. Yes, our Aussie bush is being shipped overseas or sold at Bunnings, often for really low-value products. And worse still, we are subsidising this destruction. Native forestry operations run at a loss and rely on top-ups from state budgets.
Time has expired, and I call the member for Higgins.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Glen Huntly Primary School is a welcoming school of around 270 students set across a footbridge that links the two sites. Glen Huntly punches above its weight in its NAPLAN scores and strives to continually improve. The school motto is learning today, leading tomorrow, delivered by teachers who develop each student's curiosity and confidence. I experienced the smarts of these children at a recent question time with the Year Sixes who were learning about democracy. The students asked engaging, thoughtful questions about my journey. As a science-based advocate for healthcare workers, the energy transition, it's well underway, the parties of government, they make prime ministers, and jobs for the future, energy, defence, digital and care roles, plus pathways, TAFE and university. I emphasise that despite the bad press this place gets, it still gets things done, like Medicare, paid parental leave, and protections for workers, as well as pay rises for the most vulnerable. I encourage Glen Huntly primary students to keep asking questions and stay focused. Your participation keeps the power of the people with the people. Someone who leaves, Deputy Speaker, someone who leaves a successful corporate career for community work does it for genuine passion and care for their community. That someone is Minister Mang Chong, who I had the honour of meeting at my recent visit to Carnegie Church of Christ. Carnegie Church of Christ is an organisation providing a place of belonging for culturally diverse locals, including displaced Ukrainians who have fled the war, Chinese Australians, people recovering from mental health issues. This small centre epitomises the true heart of Australia, a welcoming, warm embrace of doers and givers. The renovated kitchen, manned with volunteers, turn out delicious cheese toasties and a cuppa, the ingredients for connection. In the church's free food pantry are life's necessities sourced from local businesses like bakeries and food bank, a lifeline for many Australians. Meanwhile, the Open Hands Bible study sessions and access to life cycle rituals touches upon Christian values, the same ones I was exposed to growing up. Whether you believe or not, the way the liturgy is delivered is inclusive to all. I am proud that my Stronger Communities grant funded the church's community garden. The life that Minister Mang has carved out highlights for us that service unto others, in whatever form or place that comes in, is edifying and nurtures that which is best in ourselves. Deputy Speaker, Ardrey Park Floral Studio in East Malvern is a small business with an unwavering commitment to sustainability. This studio is an exemplar of eco-friendly practices in business. A member of the Sustainable Forestry Network, founder Kirsten is dedicated to seasonal, wild-at-art floral arrangements sourced from local growers collected in zero-emission transport. A standout practice is the use of biodegradable and recyclable materials. From the wrapping paper and twine to the vases, every component is thoughtfully selected to minimise waste. Keen eyes at the Anzac Day ceremonies I attended would have noticed the wild beauty of her wreaths, with blooms and foliage attached to a bundle of brush rather than plastic. As a former financier, Kirsten will appreciate the climate risk disclosure framework we are introducing, giving investors and companies the transparency they need to invest in new opportunities as part of the net zero transformation. Businesses like Ardrey Park Floral Studio, who take their green credentials seriously, show that business and community and environmental responsibility can and should go hand in hand. Deputy Speaker, the Albanese government knows that communities know what they need and want. That's why we have announced $350 million for the Thriving Suburbs program and $150 million for the Urban Precincts and Partnerships program. Both programs are now open for applications. The Thriving Suburbs program will release $500 to $15 million to councils and not-for-profits for capital works that enhance livability and social cohesion. Sporting pavilions, green spaces, inadequate change rooms, gyms, poor lighting, public libraries, here's your chance. Investments in our neighbourhoods make for stronger communities. The Urban Precincts and Partnership program is always open, funding is always available, and it's there to support the development of precincts like education, arts, business and so on. Australians finally have a government that has listened to the calls from our communities for locally driven urban, suburban and peri-urban community infrastructure projects. Please check them out and apply.
I call the member for Moncrief.
Deputy Speaker. Well, the Pacific Air Show is back on the Gold Coast this weekend after an immensely successful sellout in its inaugural year last year. And it's held over 3 days, and the rain, I know, is going to stop, and the sun will come out on Friday, Saturday and Sunday all day so that we can be treated to what is going to be the Sky Show of the year in this country, in fact. And organisers are expecting to top last year's $150,000 tickets sold, but we're likely to see up to 300,000 spectators set to line the beaches all the way from Main Beach down to Miami and all the surf clubs in between, who will be packed out to see this event in the skies, and the restaurants will be absolutely bursting at the seams. It will be great to see. It's a family-friendly air show, and it's cemented itself as a must-attend and, of course, a unique annual event in South East Queensland among residents and visitors alike, and people will be coming from all over the world to the Pacific Air Show. We have wonderful veterans who are going to be there and some stunning acts in the sky. It will definitely feature the world's best civilian performers, some military aviators and emerging aviation technology doing things that will make you turn your head and perhaps hold your stomach a little bit when you see the loop-de-loops and the corkscrews and up again and upside downs that the planes do. It's quite incredible. And to all those incredibly talented pilots with their teams who we'll see in the sky over the next 3 days, thank you. The joy and entertainment you bring to hundreds of thousands of spectators is unmatched. We've been flown into a new era of spectacular global events with the second Pacific Air Show, a sister event to the famous Huntington Beach, California Air Show, with its professional team from Code 4 locked in for 3 more years of in-sky entertainment for Gold Coasters, Australians, Americans and for the rest of the world to enjoy. A big congratulations to the Pacific Air Show team, Major Events Gold Coast, Experience Gold Coast and the Australian Defence Force for the incredible work that you've done in the lead up to this event. Some of the biggest draw cards at this year's event and defence assets are the RAF FA-35A display, the USAF F-22 Raptors, which will be stunning, the US Navy's P-8 Poseidon, the RAF Roulettes, which are the upside-down ones I was talking about, the RAF 100 Squadron and Nitro Circus, and that's just to name a few. Nothing compares to the joy and exhilaration that we are going to see this weekend on the Gold Coast. But this event also provides certainty to businesses who really need a lifeline at the moment, because so many businesses on the Gold Coast at the moment are struggling. And at last year's event, I spoke with a food van that pulled up outside one of the surf clubs, who took a huge amount of revenue just in a couple of days with coffees and sandwiches that really did save them and kept them going in that post-COVID period where they were trying to come back. And so the surf clubs I mentioned, all the way from goodness me, all the way from North Burleigh Surf Club, really, up the coast to Southport Surf Club. They'll all be absolutely stoked this weekend when the air show comes to town. And I just want to say a few thank yous to some people who were in this from the beginning. Right at the very beginning, when Jan McCormick from Major Events Gold Coast came to my office on Chevron Island in October 2020 to discuss how we were going to deliver this air show. And of course, to bring the Australian Defence Force to the table with this is no mean feat. And I would like to thank the former Cabinet Minister Stuart Robert for his contribution to bring the Pacific Air Show to the Gold Coast, but also the Leader of the Opposition, who of course was the Defence Minister at that time, who signed off on the Pacific Air Show and those defence assets. It would also be remiss of me not to thank the current Minister for Defence for his continuing support for the air show. This means a lot to my community, it means a lot to businesses, and it is so very, very important. It's the coalition that does support these events, and the coalition that supports free enterprise and reward for effort and small business. And just like Gold Coasters, the coalition backs all of these small businesses who will greatly benefit this weekend. And to finish, I would just like to say how important the Pacific Air Show is with regards to our relationship with the United States, our closest ally, our good friends since the ANZUS Treaty in 1951. We have been so very close. Just last night I was in the Deputy President's courtyard. We were meeting with congressmen and women who are here in Canberra, and we welcome those congressmen and women who have taken the time to come to see our Parliament, to visit our nation. And I wish, of course, the US Ambassador, who has gone home at the moment, Her Excellency Caroline Kennedy, all the best with the arrival of her new grandchild. And I also thank the acting acting person in that role, whose name just escapes me at the moment, but I'll get it back on the record, I'll give it to the Deputy Speaker, but the acting consul for her contribution also while Her Excellency Caroline Kennedy is not here at the moment. Thank you.
I call the member for Petrie.
Well, thanks very much, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, right now, people right around the country, including in my electorate of Petrie, are facing a cost of living crisis under the Albanese Labor government. The last 2 years have seen significant increases in costs for everyone, regardless of wages. It's not just those people that are doing it tough on low incomes, but it's also people that are on middle incomes, that are also doing it really tough, with 12 interest rate rises since the Albanese government was elected, ensuring that the average household mortgage repayment has gone up by $25,000. So think about that for one moment. Since the Labor government was elected, you've been paying off a house under the former coalition government. Since the Labor government has been elected, $25,000 extra a year in interest payments for people trying to get ahead. No, mortgages have gone through the roof. That's a lot of money to find every year, over $2,000 extra a month, $500 a week just in interest payments. No wonder people are doing it tough. And the government comes in here, into this place and in the House of Reps, and claims that more women are in the workplace and there's record workplace participation. No wonder they can't afford to pay their bills. They've all got to get back into the workplace. You know, and they claim that they're doing things for childcare. Well, they need to, because it means that both adults in a couple need to work, and they're going from part-time work to full-time work just to keep their heads above water. This government promised that life would be cheaper and cost of living would be down under them. They promised that there'd be a $275 reduction in electricity prices for every household, and nothing could be further from the truth. Most household electricity prices have gone up by somewhere between $500 and $1,000. Now that's set long term, that ain't going back. I mean, when have you heard of prices going up and then prices actually coming down? This is the new standard that the people of Petrie and Australians have to live with. And they get in here and claim they're doing something about cost of living by giving a measly $300 one-off payment in the budget. So that means that they put your electricity bill up by $1,000 a year, not just this year, But the year after and the year after that and the year after that, and they're going to give you a measly $300 once off as though all your problems are solved. I mean, please, give me a break. And then they claim that they're doing something about tax cuts. The tax cuts have been eaten up faster by the higher inflation that's happening. And they wouldn't have even done tax cuts if the former coalition government hadn't legislated them initially. In fact, most of the Labor members that were here in the previous term voted against the tax cuts. And then they're sort of claiming in their cost of living like, oh, well, we're giving $300 for electricity, we've done tax cuts, we're doing something for medical bills, which probably would contribute to about 10% of my electorate, so there's still 90% that don't get that. So cost of living has been a huge issue. We've also seen that real wages are at a 14-year low, with 2 quarters in a row of wage growth going backwards. So the government claims that wages have gone up, which is true. Wages have gone up, particularly in the private sector. We're seeing employees having to go to their bosses and say, look, can I have a wage increase just to keep up with the cost of living? The problem is that when the wages go up significantly as well, once again that fuels inflation, and that's passed on through goods and services into the economy that everyone in my electorate and around the country have to buy. So it's a never-ending cycle under the Albanese government of high inflation, wage growth not keeping up with inflation, higher mortgages and interest rate payments, and people are really, really struggling under this government. And when you combine that with the Queensland Labor government that's been in for 10 years and for probably 25 of the last 30, with a lack of infrastructure despite hundreds of thousands of people moving to Queensland, Queenslanders are really doing it tough. Well, we've good news. We've got the opportunity in October to vote out the Miles Labor government and hopefully get some infrastructure built in a timely manner by a new LNP government if they're put into government. But in May next year, we've got an opportunity to change this government. We've got an opportunity to not vote Labor, not to vote for Greens either. That would make things even worse. The Greens have all sorts of crazy ideas around claiming that they want to put on a rent freeze when 90% of the housing in this country comes from the private sector. We can do better.
I call the Minister for Regional Development, Local Government and Territories.
Thank you. And what a fantastic Olympics there has been in the last couple of weeks, our best ever. And the mighty Eden Monero was front and centre, representing our nation on the world stage in Paris. And I want to congratulate our very own Monique Cerrucci from Queanbeyan for her outstanding achievement in Paris. After narrowly missing selection for Tokyo in 2021 and the Commonwealth Games in 2022, she's achieved her lifelong dream of becoming an Olympian. And she's made history, the first Australian female boxer in the women's 50-kilo category. How cool is that? Her dedication and determination has been inspiring, and she is an absolute knockout. Another Eden Monero superstar I'd like to shout out is Shani Smile from Batlow. She might be claimed by Sydney now, but she was Batlow born and bred, so she's one of ours. She's our longest-serving women's rugby sevens player and a Rio 2016 gold medalist. She did us proud in Paris, with the team really putting it in, taking it up to the other nations. 4th place is nothing to shy away from. She's played such a huge role in the growth of the game, and she said herself she will continue to champion it from the sidelines as she retires from her international career. I also want to say massive congratulations to another Eden Monero legend, Nikki Ayres from Dalmini. She's off to Paris to compete in the rowing events at the Paralympics, a sport she took up after serious knee injuries and countless surgeries. Nikki said she jumped in the boat, fell out many times, but just kept going. Amazing resilience and determination. It's inspiring, and we'll be cheering you all on from home. You can't be what you can't see, which is why I want to thank each of these Olympians for being outstanding role models to young people across Eden Monero. I want to share with you a remarkable story that spans a century, a story of tradition, dedication and commitment to community. Peter Butcher Lindbeck, a name synonymous with Queanbeyan, recently discovered that his beloved Lindbeck's Butchery is turning 100 years old this year. Peter thought he had a few more years to go before hitting that mark, but a family reunion revealed the truth. The shop opened its doors in 1924, not 1928 as he had believed. It was started by Peter's uncles, Jim and Tom. The butcher shop had been a fixture in Queanbeyan for generations. Peter joined the family business after school in 1977, taking over from his father Bill in 1978. Through thick and thin, Peter and his wife Ruth have kept the doors open, navigating the challenges of running a small business with a keen sense of what the town needs, including green sausages every time the Raiders make the finals. For the past 46 years, Peter has not only provided top quality meats, but he's also become a cherished part of the community, a vital thread in the fabric of Queanbeyan. Thank you for your amazing service and congratulations on this huge milestone. We know that reliable connectivity is not just a nice to have, it's an absolute necessity in 2024. We need it to run small businesses across Eden Monaro, we need it to study, to work, to keep people up to date during natural disasters and to stay connected to family and friends. That's why it was fantastic to welcome the Regional Telecommunications Review to Braidwood and to Cooma in the last couple of weeks. The review is considering what role emerging technologies can play in boosting coverage and reliability, and it's also looking at how we can continue to be best prepared for natural disasters, something we've felt deeply across Eden Monaro. It was an important opportunity for communities in and around Braidwood and Cooma to highlight their experiences and where we need to do more. I want to thank the community for their input in this process, input that will help inform how we deliver targeted investments to improve regional telecommunications. It will ensure we build on the positive work that we've achieved to date, including $5.4 million to support new mobile phone base stations at priority locations across Eden Monaro. Last week, I attended the launch of Tales from Two Cities, a book by Mark Butts. The book contains over 400 pages of fascinating history of the Queanbeyan-Canberra relationship across 2 centuries. It highlights how our border relationship has evolved over time and is now stronger than ever. At the heart of that relationship, as captured by the many stories in that book, is sport. Sport is the centre of our tussles and of our strengths. But regardless of whether you live in Queanbeyan or Canberra, what we can all agree on is that the Green Machine is our team. Proceeds from the sale of the book will be split between 2 amazing charities doing fantastic work in our region, Treehouse in Queanbeyan and the Ricky Stewart Foundation, both of which have a huge impact in our community. Thank you to everyone involved in researching, writing, funding and printing this incredible piece of history, and a massive thank you to Ian McNamee for the idea that got it kicked off.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. All those of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The Federation Chamber stands adjourned until 10 a.m. on Monday, the 19th of August.